This is part 02 of what happened to me at Christmas Eve. If you didn't watch part 01, go for it. But it didn't work that way. The more I gave, the more they asked. The more I did, the more they expected. I became a resource, not a person. A solution, not a mother. James wasn't any different. When he and Patricia had their first child, the story repeated itself. Calls at midnight because the baby wouldn't stop crying, and they didn't know what to do. Entire weekends watching the kids because they needed time for themselves. They never paid me. They never really thanked me. They just assumed I would always be there, available, without a life of my own, without needs of my own. And the saddest part is that I allowed that to happen. I trained my children to treat me that way. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I smiled when inside I was breaking. Every time I swallowed my pain so as not to inconvenience anyone. I built this prison. I forged the chains myself. I got up from the chair and walked to the window. Outside, the neighbors' Christmas lights were starting to come on. Bright colors trying to cheer up the winter darkness. But inside me there was only gray. I thought about all the previous Christmases, all the times I had decorated this house alone, all the trees I had put up without help, all the dinners I had prepared while my children arrived late or didn't show up at all. I thought about last year when Sarah asked me to watch her 3 kids for 5 days because she and Michael were going on an anniversary trip. I accepted, of course. The kids got sick during those days. High fever, vomiting. I didn't sleep for 3 nights, caring for them, taking them to the doctor, giving them medicine. When Sarah returned, tanned and rested, the first thing she said to me was, "Mom, the kids look terrible. What did you feed them?" She didn't ask how I was. She didn't thank me for staying up all night. She blamed me, and I didn't say anything. I just lowered my head and apologized. I also remembered when James borrowed money from me 2 years ago. He needed to pay a debt and assured me he would pay me back in 3 months. It was $2,500, almost everything I had saved for emergencies. I gave him the money. 3 months passed, 6 passed, a year passed. He never paid me back. And when I finally mustered the courage to ask him, he looked at me as if I were the selfish one. "Mom, I'm in a difficult situation right now. I can't give you that money. I thought you had just given it to me. You're my mother. You're supposed to help me without expecting anything in return." I was speechless, because he was right about one thing. I had always given without expecting anything in return. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. It didn't mean it didn't make me feel used. I went back to the table and opened the notebook again. I started writing a different list. It wasn't a list of things I was going to cancel. It was a list of all the times I had been invisible. My 64th birthday, no one came. Last year's Mother's Day, I received a generic text message. Christmas 3 years ago, I cooked for 14 people. No one stayed to help me clean. The time I was in the hospital, with pneumonia. Sarah said she couldn't visit because she had a hair appointment. When I sold my mother's jewelry to help James with his business, he never thanked me. The list grew, page after page, years and years of moments when I had been treated as secondary, as someone whose existence only mattered when it was convenient for others. When I finished writing, I looked at the pages filled with black ink and realized something. I had stopped existing for them a long time ago. I had become a function, a service. I was no longer Clara. I was no longer the woman who had dreams, desires, needs. I was just Mom, the problem solver, Grandma, the caretaker, her, the one who was always available. I closed the notebook hard. The sound echoed in the empty kitchen. Something inside me hardened at that moment. It wasn't hate. It wasn't revenge. It was something much simpler and more powerful. It was the decision not to disappear again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. A silence I knew too well. The same silence that had accompanied me for the last 11 years, ever since my husband died and left me alone in this world. But I wasn't really alone, was I? I had 2 children. I had 7 grandchildren. I had a family. Or at least that's what I believed. What I had believed for so long. I got up from the bed around 3 in the morning and went down to the living room. I turned on a small lamp and sat on the couch. In front of me, on the wall, was the large family portrait we had taken 3 years ago. We were all there, Sarah with Michael and their 3 children, James with Patricia and their 4 children, and me in the center, smiling. But as I looked at that photo, something hit me with a brutal force. I wasn't really in the center. I was in the back, almost hidden behind everyone, as if the photographer had decided that my presence wasn't important enough to highlight. I went closer to the photo and looked at it more carefully. Sarah was in front, perfectly made up, with a radiant smile. James beside her with that confident look he always had. The children, beautiful, full of life. Michael and Patricia posing as if they were in a magazine. And me. I was there in the back, small, blurry, almost invisible. I remembered the day we took that photo. It had been Sarah's idea. "Mom, we need a professional family photo, something we can frame and put in the living room." I had been excited. I thought that finally there would be a memory where we were all together, united. But when we got to the studio, the photographer started arranging everyone. He put Sarah and James in front. He arranged the grandchildren around them. He placed Michael and Patricia in strategic positions. And then he looked at me and said, "You stand in the back, Mrs. Jenkins. That way you don't block anyone." I obeyed, as I always did. I stood in the back. I didn't block anyone. I let everyone else shine while I stayed in the shadows. Sarah looked at the photos and was thrilled. "You look great, Mom. You were perfect back there." Perfect back there. Those words now burned me like acid. I walked away from the portrait and went to the other side of the living room, where there was a small shelf with more photos. Photos of birthdays, graduations, parties. I started looking through them one by one. In the photo of Sarah's graduation, I wasn't there. She had told me there were only tickets for her husband and children. "You understand, Mom, the space is limited." I understood. I always understood. In the photo of James's first child's baptism, I was cut in half. Someone had decided that the important part of the photo was the baby and the parents. My face was divided by the edge of the frame. In the Christmas photo from 3 years ago, I was in the kitchen serving food. I wasn't with them at the table. I wasn't toasting. I was working, as always. I kept looking, photo after photo. And in all of them, it was the same. I was absent, cut off, blurry, or simply in the background doing something useful. I was never the center. I was never the protagonist. I was always the accessory. I sat down on the couch again with an old album in my hands. It was an album from when my children were little. Photos from when Sarah was 6 years old and James was 8. Photos of birthdays, beach vacations, afternoons at the park. In all those photos, I was present, smiling, hugging them, kissing them, being their mom. When did I stop being their mom and become their servant? I remembered a specific moment. Sarah was 17. She had come home from school furious because a friend had betrayed her. I was cooking, but I stopped everything to listen to her. I sat with her for 2 hours, drying her tears, giving her advice, making her laugh. In the end, she hugged me and said, "Thanks, Mom. You're the best. You're always there when I need you. You're always there when I need you." That phrase had been a blessing then. Now I saw it as a curse because I realized that was exactly what I was to them. Someone who was there when they needed me. Not someone who existed for myself. Not someone with my own needs, just someone available to solve their problems. And with James, it had been the same. I remembered when he was 21 and going through a breakup. He came to my house in the middle of the night crying. I stayed awake with him all night. I made him tea. I hugged him. I told him everything was going to be okay. He said to me, "I don't know what I would do without you, Mom. You always know how to fix things. You always know how to fix things." Another curse disguised as a compliment. Because that's what I did. I fixed things. I solved problems. I was available. And at some point along that road, I stopped being a person and became a tool. I closed the album and put it aside. My hands were shaking. Not from cold, but from contained rage. I remembered Mother's Day last year. That day that is supposed to be for honoring mothers, to make them feel special, to thank them for everything they have done. Sarah sent me a text message at 11 in the morning. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom. We love you very much." With a heart emoji at the end, that was all. A generic message she probably sent from her bed, without even thinking about it. James called me at 3 in the afternoon. "Hey, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. Hey, can you watch the kids next weekend? Patricia and I need to go out." Not even on Mother's Day could I just be the mother. I had to continue being the nanny. I told them yes, as always, and I spent that day alone, cooking for myself, pretending that I didn't care. But I did care. God, how I cared. I got up from the couch and walked to the window. Outside, the street was empty. The neighbors' Christmas lights were still on, blinking in the darkness. Green, red, gold. Colors that promised joy. Colors that lied. I thought about all the times I had put those same lights on my house. All the times I had decorated the tree alone. All the times I had tried to create a warm and cozy atmosphere for my family. And what had I received in return? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I remembered the year I got sick. It had been 3 years ago. A bad case of bronchitis that kept me in bed for 2 weeks. The doctor told me I needed absolute rest and that someone should take care of me. I called Sarah. "Mom, I can't. The kids have activities and Michael is busy with work. But I can send you soup. Does that work for you?" She never sent the soup. I called James. "Mom, this week is complicated. Patricia has an important event and I have meetings, but I'll call you later, okay?" He didn't call. I spent those 2 weeks alone, dragging myself to the kitchen to make myself something to eat, taking medicine with trembling hands, sleeping in sweat and fever with no one to put a cool cloth on my forehead. And when I finally recovered and was available to them again, no one asked how I had been. They only called again when they needed something. "Mom, can you watch the kids? Mom, can you lend me money? Mom, I need you to come help me with this." Always needing, never giving. I walked away from the window and went back to the couch. I took out my phone and opened the photo gallery. I started looking through recent photos. Photos that Sarah and James posted on their social media. There they were, smiling, happy, in fancy restaurants, on beach trips, at parties with friends, living their perfect lives. And in none of those photos was I, because I wasn't part of their perfect lives. I was part of their obligations, their burdens, the things they had to tolerate but not celebrate. I kept looking. I found a photo from 6 months ago. It was Michael's birthday. Sarah had organized a big party. There was food, music, decorations. Everyone looked happy. I was not invited. I found out about the party days later when I saw the photos online. When I asked Sarah why she hadn't invited me, she said, "Oh, Mom, it was an adult party. I thought you'd be bored. Plus, it was last minute." Last minute. It had been planned for weeks, but I wasn't invited because I wasn't part of their social circle. I was just the one who watched their kids when they wanted to go out. The tears started to fall. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of years and years of feeling small, invisible, insignificant. I angrily wiped away the tears and took a deep breath. I wasn't going to cry about this anymore. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for my children to finally see me, because now I understood the truth. They were never going to see me. Not because I wasn't visible, but because they had chosen not to look. Dawn came slowly that morning. I was still awake on the couch, surrounded by scattered albums and photos. The gray light of day began to filter through the windows, illuminating the mess of memories I had left around me. I got up with an aching body. I hadn't slept at all, but my mind was clearer than ever. It was as if all the fog of years of confusion had finally lifted, and I could see with painful clarity. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. While I waited for the coffee maker to finish, I opened my phone and looked up the grocery store's number. It was 7 in the morning. I knew they opened at 8. I decided to wait. I sat at the table with my steaming cup of coffee in my hands. The warmth of the liquid comforted me, anchoring me to the reality of what I was about to do. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was something deeper. It was the conscious decision to stop sacrificing myself for people who had never appreciated it. It was choosing myself for the first time in decades. At 8 on the dot, I dialed the grocery store's number. A friendly voice answered on the other end. "Good morning, Riverside Market. How can I help you?" "Good morning. I need to cancel an order I placed for Christmas. The name is Clara Jenkins." There was a pause as the person looked in the system. "Yes, here it is. A large order for 16 people. Turkey, full sides, desserts. The total is $850. Are you sure you want to cancel it? It's almost ready to be delivered on the 23rd. "Completely sure. Please cancel it." "Understood. The full refund will be made to your card within 3 to 5 business days. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, that's all. Thank you." I hung up the phone and looked at it. $850 that would come back to me. $850 that I could use for myself, for something I wanted, for something that would make me happy. Next on my list were the gifts. I had bought 7 gifts from different stores over the last 3 months. Some still had receipts, others didn't. But I was going to try to return all of them. I got dressed quickly and left the house. The first store opened at 9 Mao. I arrived 15 minutes early and waited in the parking lot. When the doors finally opened, I went straight to the returns counter. "Good morning. I need to return this." I placed a large box on the counter. A robot kit I had bought for James's oldest son. It had cost $180. The employee checked the receipt. "It's within the return period. Any problem with the product?" "No, I just changed my mind." "Understood. Refund to the card or store credit?" "Refund to the card." She processed the return and gave me the receipt. $180 back. I went to the second store. I returned a tablet I had bought for one of Sarah's daughters, $250 more. Third store, a large dollhouse with accessories, $210. Fourth store, clothes for 3 of the grandchildren, $280. Store after store, return after return. Some employees looked at me with curiosity. An older woman returning so many toys before Christmas. They probably thought it was strange, but I didn't care what they thought. By 2 pounds in the afternoon, I had recovered $1,320. There was one gift I couldn't return because I had lost the receipt. I left it in a donation box outside a church. Let others enjoy it. Children whose parents might actually value their grandmothers. I returned home exhausted, but with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't joy. It wasn't sadness. It was something like relief. Like when you finally stop carrying a heavy load you've been holding for too long. I sat in the living room and dialed Margaret's number. "Clara, what a surprise. How are you?" "Margaret, about that mountain trip. How long were you planning to stay?" "Well, I was going to be there until the 27th, but I can stay longer if you want. I was actually thinking of spending New Year's there too. It's a peaceful place. Perfect for resting." "Can I go with you? I mean, not just for Christmas. I want to go for longer. A week, maybe 2. There was a pause. Then Margaret said in a soft voice, "Clara, are you okay? Tell me." And then it all came out. I told her about the conversation I had heard, about Sarah and James planning to leave me with the 7 kids while they went on vacation, about all the years of being invisible, about the forgotten birthdays and the lonely Christmases, about feeling used and discarded. Margaret listened in silence. When I finished, her voice was firm and warm. "Clara, listen to me carefully. You're coming with me. We're leaving on the 23rd in the morning, and we're not coming back until you want to. We're going to spend Christmas and New Year's in the mountains, eating well, resting without pressure from anyone. And if anyone calls you, you don't answer. Did you hear me? You don't answer." "But the children have parents, and those parents can take care of them for once in their lives. You are not responsible for solving the problems they created themselves." She was right. Of course she was right. But decades of conditioning don't disappear with one conversation. "I'm scared, Margaret. Scared of what they're going to say, of what they're going to think. And what about what you think? What about what you feel? Clara, you've spent your whole life worrying about what others feel. It's time for someone to worry about you. And if no one else is going to do it, then you have to do it yourself." We hung up after agreeing on the trip details. Margaret would pick me up on the 23rd at 8 hours in the morning. We would take only what we needed: comfortable clothes, warm jackets, books. No stress, no obligations. The next few days were strange. Sarah called twice to confirm that everything was ready for Christmas. I responded with evasions. "Yes, Sarah, everything is under control." I wasn't exactly lying. Everything was under control. My control, not hers. James sent a message. "Mom, we're dropping the kids off with you on the 24th at 10 hours in the morning. We'll be back on the 26th in the evening. Thanks for doing this." I didn't respond. I just left the message on read. On the night of December 22nd, I started packing. I took a small suitcase out of the closet and put it on the bed. I didn't need much. A couple of warm sweaters, comfortable pants, boots, my winter coat that I hadn't worn in years. While I was packing, the doorbell rang. It was late, almost 9 at night. I went downstairs feeling a little surprised and opened the door. It was Sarah. She had a bag in her hand and a forced smile on her face. "Hi, Mom. I brought you this." She held out the bag. Inside were packages of cookies and juice boxes. You know how the kids like to snack. She didn't invite herself in. She didn't even ask how I was. She just handed me the bag like someone delivering a package. "Sarah," I said in a calm voice, "I need to tell you something." She looked at her watch. "Mom, I'm in a hurry. Michael is waiting for me in the car. Can it be quick?" I looked at my daughter. I really looked at her. I saw the woman she had become, successful, confident, well-dressed. But I also saw her for what she was. Someone who had learned to use people without even realizing she was doing it. "I'm not going to be here for Christmas." Sarah blinked in confusion. "What do you mean you're not going to be here?" "Mom, we already agreed." "What?" "You agreed." "I didn't agree to anything. I heard your conversation last week. I know you plan to leave all 7 kids with me while you and James went on vacation." Her face went rigid. "You were listening to my private conversations?" "I was in my own house. You were the one talking out loud without caring if I heard or not." "Mom, it's not a big deal. It's just a few days. The kids adore you." "It's not a big deal," I repeated slowly. "It's not a big deal that you use me as a free nanny. It's not a big deal that you assume I don't have a life of my own. It's not a big deal that you never ask me what I want. What are you talking about? We've always included you." "Included?" I felt my voice rising slightly. "Sarah, I wasn't invited to Michael's birthday. I wasn't invited to your anniversary last year. The only time you include me is when you need something from me." "You're exaggerating." "No, I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years." Sarah sighed with impatience. "Fine. So what do you want? Do you want us to pay you? Is that it?" Her words hit me like a slap. Pay me? As if that was the missing piece. as if the problem was money and not the absolute lack of respect and love. "I don't want your money, Sarah. I want you to see me. I want you to value me. But I realize that's never going to happen. So I've decided to do something different this year." "What?" "I'm going on a trip. I'm leaving tomorrow morning and not coming back until after New Year's." The silence that followed my words was so dense I could feel it. Sarah looked at me as if I had just spoken a foreign language. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she finally found her voice. "You're going on a trip? Mom, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." But everything's already planned. The kids are expecting to come here. We already told them they'd be spending Christmas with Grandma." "Then you'll have to change your plans, just like I changed mine." Sarah took a step back as if my words were physically threatening. "You can't do this to us. It's Christmas, it's family time." "It's family time," I repeated, with a calmness that surprised me. "But I don't count as family, do I? I only count as the one who solves everyone's problems." "You're being ridiculous. Of course you're family. When was the last time you invited me to do something that didn't involve watching your kids?" She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. I saw her search her memory, trying to find a single example. She didn't find one. "Exactly," I said. "You can't remember because it hasn't happened. I only exist for you when you need me." "Mom, you're misinterpreting everything. We've been busy. It's true, but that doesn't mean we don't love you." "Love without action is just empty words, Sarah." Her face began to redden. I recognized that expression. It was the same one she used to get when she was a little girl and didn't get her way. "And what are we supposed to do with the kids? James and I already paid for the resorts. We already made the reservations. We can't just cancel everything like this." "That's not my problem." "It's not your problem? They're your grandchildren." "Yes, they're my grandchildren, but they are your children. Your responsibility, not mine." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "I don't recognize you. This isn't you." "You're right. This isn't the woman you've known your whole life. That woman let herself be walked all over. This new version has decided that enough is enough." "And you're going to do this? You're going to ruin your grandchildren's Christmas just to make a point?" Her words were designed to make me feel guilty, and they worked for a moment. I felt the familiar pang in my chest, the urge to back down, to say I was exaggerating, to return to my usual role. But then I remembered the conversation I had heard. Just drop all 7 grandkids with her and that's it. I remembered all the forgotten birthdays, all the lonely nights, all the moments when I had been invisible to my own family. "I'm not ruining anything," I said in a firm voice. "You ruined the respect you should have had for me years ago. I'm just picking up what's left of my dignity. This is pure selfishness. Dad would be disappointed in you." That was the last straw, mentioning my dead husband, using him as a weapon against me. "Don't you dare," I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. "Don't you dare talk about your father. He never treated me the way you do. He valued me. He saw me. He truly loved me. And we love you too." "No, you use me. There's a difference." Sarah took her phone out of her pocket. "I'm calling James. He's going to talk to you. This is crazy." "Call him if you want. My decision isn't going to change." She dialed while glaring at me. She waited for James to answer. "James, you're on speaker. I'm with Mom and she just told me she's not going to be here for Christmas, that she's going on a trip. Tell her this is absurd." I heard James's voice on the other end. "What? Mom, is that true?" "Yes, James, it's true." "But why? Did something happen?" "Many things happened for many years, and I finally decided that I deserve better than to be treated like your employee." "No one treats you like an employee. You're our mother." "When was my last birthday, James?" Silence. "I'll tell you. It was August 15th, 4 months ago. You didn't call, you didn't write, you didn't come, nothing." "Mom, I was busy with..." "You're always busy. Everyone is always busy. Except when you need me for something. Then you find the time. This isn't fair, Sarah chimed in. You're punishing us for something we didn't even know bothered you. It bothered me because you never stopped to ask me. You never cared how I felt. You only cared about what I could do for you. James spoke again. Mom, we can talk about this after Christmas, but right now, we need you to be available. Available, I finished for him. That's the word you're looking for. You need me to be available. Well, guess what? I'm not anymore. Then what are we going to do? James's voice sounded more irritated than worried. You're going to do what all parents do, take care of your own children, cancel your trips or take the kids with you or hire someone. I don't know. It's not my problem to solve. Sarah closed her eyes as if she were making an effort to stay calm. Mom, be reasonable. We've already paid thousands of dollars for these trips. We can't just... I paid $850 for the dinner you were going to eat. And $400 for gifts you were going to open. That money matters too. Or at least it should. Wait, James said. You canceled the dinner and the gifts? I returned them. Every one of them. And I got my money back. The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. I could imagine James's face processing this information. I can't believe you did that, Sarah finally said. The kids are going to be devastated. The kids are going to be fine. They're resilient. What won't be fine is if they keep growing up thinking that grandmas only exist to serve them. Sarah put her phone away. Her eyes were shining, but I don't know if it was from tears or rage. Fine, go, take your trip. But don't expect things to go back to the way they were when you get back. I don't want things to go back to the way they were. That's exactly the point. She turned around and started walking to her car. Then she stopped and looked at me over her shoulder. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not having done it sooner. I watched her get into the car where Michael was waiting. Even from a distance, I could see her tense body language as she told him what had happened. The car started quickly and disappeared into the darkness of the street. I closed the door and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating fast. But I didn't feel bad. I felt liberated. I went up to my room and continued packing. I folded each item of clothing carefully, thinking about the mountains, about the fresh air, about conversations without pressure. I packed my warmest coat, the one I had bought 2 years ago and had barely used because there was never any time for me. I put my favorite novel in the suitcase, a book I had tried to read 4 times but was always interrupted. This time, I would finish it. I added a new journal. Maybe I would write. Maybe I would sketch. Maybe I would just use it to make lists of things that made me happy. Things I had forgotten I liked. My phone started ringing. It was James. I didn't answer. He called 3 more times. Then Sarah, then Michael, then Patricia. They all wanted to convince me. They all wanted me to go back to my place, to the place where I was useful but invisible. I turned off the phone. The silence that followed was beautiful. I sat on the bed and looked at the half-full suitcase. It was small. I didn't need much. I just needed space to breathe. December 23rd dawned with a clear sky. I woke up early, before the sun came out, with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was anticipation, something I hadn't felt in years. I took a long shower, letting the hot water relax my tense muscles. I dressed in comfortable clothes, some jeans and a soft sweater. Nothing fancy, nothing that needed to be ironed or coordinated. Just clothes that made me feel free. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee. While I drank it, I looked around the house. Everything was clean, tidy, empty. There were no Christmas decorations this year. There was no tree, no lights. It was just a house. And for the first time in a long time, that seemed enough to me. At 8 miles on the dot, the doorbell rang. Margaret had arrived. I opened the door and there she was, smiling with a winter scarf wrapped around her neck and a contagious energy. Ready for the adventure? More than ready. I put my suitcase in the trunk of her car. It was an older SUV, but reliable, perfect for mountain roads. Margaret had prepared a cooler with water, tea, and snacks for the road. When I got in the car and closed the door, I felt something I hadn't expected. Absolute relief, as if I had just let go of a weight I had been carrying for decades. "Everything okay?" Margaret asked as she started the car. "Everything's perfect." We left the city behind. The streets became less congested, the buildings smaller, until finally there was only the open road in front of us. Margaret put on some soft music. Nothing Christmassy, just calm melodies that filled the silence without demanding attention. For the first hour, we didn't talk much. I looked out the window, watching the landscape go by. Open fields, bare trees, small towns that appeared and disappeared. I felt as if I were waking up from a long, confusing dream. "Did they call?" Margaret asked eventually. "Many times." I turned off the phone. "Good," Margaret said. "Clara, do you think I'm a bad person?" She looked at me out of the corner of her eye. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I left my grandchildren without Christmas. Because I canceled everything. Because I left." Margaret sighed. "Clara, tell me something. If a friend of yours told you this story, if she told you that her children use her, that they never appreciate her, that they only look for her when they need something, what would you tell her?" I thought about it for a moment. "I would tell her she deserves better." "Exactly. Then why don't you deserve the same?" I didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe I did. But I had never allowed myself to say it out loud. I had spent so many years believing that my value was in what I could give, in what I could do for others, that I had forgotten that I also had the right to receive. We kept driving. We stopped once to get gas and stretch our legs. Margaret bought coffee and pastries. We sat on a bench outside the gas station, eating in comfortable silence. "The town we're going to is small," Margaret said. "There's not much to do, but that's the point. It's peaceful. The people are friendly. There's beautiful hiking trails. And the cabin I rented has a fireplace where you can watch the snow if it falls." "Sounds perfect." "There's no cell service in most of the area. Well, there is in town, but it's spotty. So you're basically going to be disconnected." Even better, we arrived at the town around 2 in the afternoon. It was exactly as Margaret had described it. Small, quaint, with wooden buildings and snow-dusted streets. The mountain air was crisp and clean, bringing the smell of pine and freedom. The cabin Margaret had rented was modest but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a living room with large windows overlooking the mountains, and a stone fireplace. Everything was simple, clean, peaceful. "This is your room," Margaret said, opening a door. It was a small room with a bed covered in a thick quilt, a nightstand and a window with a view of the pine forest. I dropped my suitcase on the floor and walked to the window. The mountains stretched out majestically in front of me, their peaks covered in snow, sparkling in the afternoon sun. I just stood there watching, and something inside me began to loosen. Something that had been tight for years. "I'm going to make something to eat," Margaret said from the doorway. "Rest for a bit if you want." I sat on the bed and took a deep breath. The air here tasted different, cleaner, freer. I turned on my phone for just a moment to see if there was a real emergency. The signal was weak, but messages slowly loaded. 47 missed calls, 31 text messages, all from Sarah, James, Michael, Patricia. The messages started with confusion, then moved to anger, then to attempts at manipulation. Sarah: "Mom, the kids are crying. This is what you wanted?" James: "I called the grocery store. They confirmed you canceled everything. This is a level of selfishness I never imagined from you." Michael: "Clara, Sarah is very upset. This isn't good for her health. You need to come back." Patricia: I don't understand what we did wrong. We have always treated you with respect. I read each message without feeling what I expected to feel. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel an urgency to respond. I just felt a clear distance between them and me. I turned off the phone again and put it at the bottom of my suitcase. Margaret called me from the kitchen. "Food is ready." I left the room and found a simple table but full of good things. Fresh salad, roasted chicken, warm bread, fruit. Simple food that tasted like care. We ate slowly, without rushing, talking about unimportant things. The weather, the beauty of the mountains, the plans for the next few days. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve," Margaret said. "I thought we could go for a hike in the morning. There's a beautiful trail that leads to a lookout point. And at night, if you want, we can have a simple dinner here or go to the town's only restaurant. Whatever you prefer is fine with me. Clara, this trip is for you. What do you want?" The question caught me by surprise. What did I want? It had been so long since anyone had asked me that. "I want a hike," I said slowly. "I want to see the lookout. And at night, I want a quiet dinner here without any stress." Margaret smiled. "Then that's what we'll do." That afternoon, we took a short walk near the cabin. The sun was starting to set, painting the snow golden. I let the cold air fill my lungs. It was sharp, but refreshing. Margaret walked beside me, pointing out animal tracks in the snow from time to time. There were other people around. Families with children building snowmen. Couples walking hand in hand. Groups of friends laughing. Everyone seemed at peace. No one seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. "You know what hurts the most?" I said suddenly. "What?" "That they didn't even notice I was disappearing. They didn't even notice I was unhappy. Only when they needed me. I was invisible for years and they never cared." Margaret stopped and took my arm. "Clara, look at me. You're not invisible. They chose not to see you. There's a huge difference. And the fact that they couldn't see your worth doesn't mean you don't have it." Her words hit me hard. I felt the tears coming, but this time I didn't stop them. I let them fall freely while the quiet forest surrounded us. Margaret hugged me. She didn't say anything else. She just held me while I cried out years of accumulated pain. When I finally pulled away, I wiped my tears and looked at the mountains glowing in the sunset. "Thank you," I said to Margaret. "What for?" "For seeing me, for being here, for not judging me." That's what real friends do. We returned to the cabin when it was already getting dark. Margaret made hot cocoa and we sat by the fireplace, wrapped in warm blankets, listening to the crackling of the fire. We didn't talk much. There was no need. The company was enough. That night I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. There were no nightmares, no anxiety, just a deep and restorative rest. Christmas Eve dawned bright and cold. I woke up to the sound of wind in the pines and the smell of fresh coffee coming from the kitchen. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came back to me. I was far away. I was free. I was choosing myself for the first time in decades. I got up slowly, without rushing. Margaret was already in the kitchen making breakfast. Toast, eggs, fresh fruit, orange juice. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years." We ate breakfast by the window, looking at the mountains. The sky was clear, promising a beautiful day for hiking. "Ready for the trail?" Margaret asked. "Ready." We bundled up in warm layers and set out. The trail started gentle but gradually climbed through the forest. The air was crisp and clean, scented with pine. Snow crunched under our boots. We hiked for about an hour, taking our time, stopping to admire views and catch our breath. When we reached the lookout point, the vista took my breath away. Mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, their peaks glittering white against the blue sky. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "It is," Margaret agreed. "Makes you realize how big the world is, how many possibilities there are." We stood there for a long time, just taking it in. I felt small in the best possible way. Not insignificant, but free from the burden of thinking I had to control everything, fix everything, be everything for everyone. We hiked back down in comfortable silence, arriving at the cabin around noon. We made simple sandwiches for lunch and spent the afternoon reading by the fire. As evening approached, Margaret started preparing dinner. Nothing elaborate, just pasta with vegetables and a simple salad. But we set the table nicely, with candles and the cloth napkins the cabin provided. "Happy Christmas Eve," Margaret said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "Happy Christmas Eve," I replied. We toasted, and the sound of the glasses clinking was soft and clear. There were no fireworks. There were no expensive gifts, no stress. Just two friends sharing a quiet dinner by a warm fire. "You know what the strangest thing is?" I said after a while. "What?" "I don't miss anything I left behind. I thought I would feel bad. I thought I would miss the kids, the traditions, all that Christmas craziness. But no, I just feel relief. That's because you're finally where you should be, with yourself." That night I slept soundly again. I dreamed of mountains, of hiking trails that went on forever, of having time for everything and a hurry for nothing. Christmas Day dawned just as beautiful. Margaret and I had a late breakfast, no alarms, no obligations. Then we went for another walk, this time exploring the small town. The main street was charming, with a handful of shops and a small church where bells were ringing. We stopped at a little market where local artisans sold handmade crafts. I found myself drawn to a booth selling woven scarves. They were beautiful, soft wool in earthy colors. The woman selling them was elderly, probably around my age, with kind eyes. "They're lovely," I told her. "Thank you, dear. I make them myself. Each one takes about a week." "How much is this one?" I pointed to a forest green scarf with subtle gray threads running through it. $20. I bought it and wrapped it around my neck. It was warm and soft, and more importantly, it was mine. Something I chose for myself. Margaret bought some handmade ornaments. We wandered through the market without pressure, just enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. In the afternoon, we decided to go to the town's restaurant, a small, family-run place that smelled like wood smoke and home cooking. There were other people there, also spending a peaceful Christmas. An elderly couple holding hands, a group of friends laughing over their meal. Everyone seemed happy, relaxed. We ordered roasted chicken and vegetables. The food was delicious, prepared with care. It wasn't an elaborate 15-course feast. It was simple, but it had something that the dinners I used to prepare never had. I could enjoy it without worrying about serving others. While we ate, my phone started vibrating in my pocket. I ignored it. It kept vibrating, insistent, annoying. Finally, I took out the phone. It was Sarah calling over and over. I sighed and answered. "Yes?" "Mom." Her voice sounded different, controlled but tense. "We need to talk. I'm busy." "You're busy?" she repeated in a tone I couldn't decipher. "It's Christmas Day and you're busy?" "That's right. James and I are coming to your house tomorrow. We need to sort this out." "There's nothing to sort out, Sarah. I've already made my decision. You can't just leave and pretend you don't have responsibilities." "My only responsibilities are to myself. You're adults. You have to learn to manage your own lives." "What about the kids? What did they do wrong?" "The kids didn't do anything wrong, but it's not my job to raise them either. I already raised my children. Now it's your turn." "I don't recognize you." "Good, because the woman you knew no longer exists. She got tired of being invisible." There was a long pause. Then Sarah spoke in a lower, almost threatening voice. "Fine. If this is what you want, perfect. But don't expect us to look for you when you get back. Don't expect us to include you in anything. You made your decision. Now live with the consequences." "I'll live with them perfectly well." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were trembling slightly, but not from fear. From something like liberation. Margaret looked at me from across the table. How do you feel? Free. That night, back at the cabin, I sat by the fire with the journal I had brought. I opened the first page and began to write. Today is Christmas, and I'm where I want to be. For the first time in my life, I chose my own peace over the expectations of others. And I don't regret it. I kept writing about the years of silence, about the moments of invisibility, about learning that saying no is not selfishness but self-love. I wrote until my hand hurt. And when I finally closed the journal, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The following days passed in a calm I didn't know existed. Margaret and I woke up late, had breakfast by the fire, went for walks, read, talked. There were no schedules, no pressures, just time that moved slow and soft like falling snow. On the afternoon of December 28th, I was reading in the living room when I heard my phone buzz. I had left it on, but silenced. This time it wasn't a call, but a message from an unknown number. I opened it out of curiosity. Clara, it's Denise Harper, your neighbor. Sarah and James are here. They've been knocking on your door for the last hour. I thought you should know. I read the message twice. So they had followed through on their threat. They had come to look for me. I imagined the scene, Sarah furiously knocking on the door, James pacing impatiently, both expecting me to show up, to apologize, to return to my place. I replied to Denise, "Thanks for the heads up. I'm not in town. I won't be back until after New Year's. If they come back, please don't give them any information about me." Denise responded quickly, "Understood. Take care." I put the phone aside and went back to my book, but I couldn't concentrate. I knew this wasn't over. I knew I would eventually have to face them. That night, while we were having dinner, I told Margaret what had happened. "And what are you going to do when you get back?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I know I'm not going back to who I was before." "And what if they don't accept that?" "Then they don't accept it. I can't control how they react. I can only control how I react." Margaret nodded. "You're going to be okay, Clara. You're stronger than you think." On December 29th, we decided to do something different. Margaret had heard about a small art gallery in the next town over. We took the car and went to explore. The gallery was small but filled with beautiful works, paintings of mountain landscapes, wood sculptures, black and white photographs, all created by local artists. There was one painting in particular that caught my eye. It was of an older woman sitting in a rocking chair on a porch, looking out at mountains. Her posture was peaceful, almost meditative. There was something about that image that resonated deeply with me. "It's beautiful," I said to the gallery owner. "A local artist painted it," he explained. "She says it represents the peace that comes after the storm." "How much does it cost?" $300. It was more than I had planned to spend, but something in that painting spoke to me. It was like seeing my own transformation reflected in oil and canvas. "I'll take it." On the way back to the cabin, we carefully placed the painting in the back seat. I couldn't stop looking at it. "It's perfect for you," Margaret said. "Yeah," I agreed. "I think so too." That night, I wrote more in my journal, about the fear I had felt at the beginning, about the guilt I expected to feel but which never came, about discovering that chosen solitude was different from imposed loneliness. On December 30th, while we were hiking a new trail, my phone rang. This time, it was a number I did recognize. Michael, Sarah's husband. I hesitated before answering. Then I decided it was time to face this directly. "Yes?" "Clara, I need to talk to you." His voice was serious, almost formal. "I'm listening." "Sarah is devastated. You don't understand the damage you've caused." On the contrary, I understand perfectly the damage I have allowed them to cause me for years. This isn't about you. This is about family. Family? I felt my voice harden. Michael, how many times have you invited me to something that didn't involve watching your kids? How many times have you asked me how I'm doing? How many times have you treated me as something more than a convenient nanny? Silence on the other end. Exactly. Never. Because for you, for Sarah, for James, I only exist when I'm useful. Well, guess what? I don't accept that anymore. You're the grandmother. You're supposed to be there for the kids. I am a person before I am a grandmother, and that person deserves respect. Sarah says she doesn't want to see you again. That's her decision. I'll be here when she's ready to treat me with dignity, but not before. You're incredibly selfish, and you're incredibly blind, but it's no longer my job to make you see. I hung up. This time my hands weren't shaking. This time I only felt a deep calm. Margaret had heard the conversation. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me. On December 31st, we decided to have a small celebration. We bought fresh ingredients at the town market and cooked together. Nothing elaborate, just a nice meal. We set the table with candles and sprigs of pine we had collected on our walks. At 11 p.m. at night, we bundled up and went outside. From the cabin's porch, we could see distant lights from the town, small points of warmth in the cold night. To new beginnings, Margaret said, raising her mug of hot cider. To choosing myself, I replied. We toasted as the sound of distant church bells began to chime midnight. January 1st dawned peaceful and white. Snow had fallen overnight, covering everything in a fresh blanket. Margaret and I spent the day not doing much, just existing. In the afternoon, I received another message. This time it was from James. Mom, this has gone too far. You need to come back and fix this. Sarah won't stop crying. The kids are asking for you. Dad wouldn't have wanted this. I read the message several times. The attempt to use my dead husband as an emotional weapon no longer worked. He had been a good man. He had valued me. And if he were alive, he would have understood why I did what I did. I replied, James, your father taught me that true love isn't manipulation. He taught me that relationships are built on mutual respect. If Sarah is crying, maybe it's time for both of you to reflect on why. If the kids are asking for me, tell them their grandma loves them, but she also loves herself. I'll be back in 2 days. When I do, things are going to be different. Either you accept the new Clara, or we have nothing more to talk about. I sent the message and turned off the phone. On January the 2nd, Margaret and I packed our things. The trip back was peaceful. I looked out the window, processing everything I had experienced in those days. I wasn't a different person. I was the same person I had always been, but finally free of the chains I had allowed to be put on me. When we arrived at my house, Margaret helped me get my suitcase out. Are you going to be okay? She asked. I'm going to be perfect. We hugged. Thanks for everything, Margaret. For seeing me. For being there. When you want to do this again, just let me know. I watched her drive away. Then I went into my house. It was exactly as I had left it. Clean, tidy, empty. But now that emptiness didn't scare me. It was space. Space to build something new. I hung the painting I had bought on the living room wall. The woman looking out at the mountains was now looking at me, reminding me who I was now. That night, as I was making tea, the doorbell rang. I looked out the window. It was Sarah and James, standing together with serious faces. I took a deep breath. It was time for the final conversation. I opened the door, but I didn't invite them in. We need to talk, Sarah said. Then talk. Sarah and James stood in the doorway, looking at me as if they didn't recognize me. Maybe they didn't. The woman they had known their whole lives would have opened the door wide, invited them in, made coffee, would have done everything possible to smooth over the tension. But that woman no longer existed. "You're not going to let us in?" James asked, in a tone that was meant to be authoritative but sounded more like confusion. "It depends on what you've come to say." Sarah crossed her arms. Her face was tense, with dark circles that revealed sleepless nights. But I didn't feel the need to fix that. It wasn't my job to fix the consequences of their own decisions. "We came to talk about what happened," Sarah said. "About how you ruined the whole family's Christmas." "I didn't ruin anything. You created an unsustainable situation and I simply refused to be a part of it." "You left us hanging," James interjected. "We lost thousands of dollars on reservations we couldn't cancel. We had to spend Christmas with 7 screaming kids asking for you. And I spent Christmas in peace for the first time in years. It was a choice. Mine." Sarah took a step forward. "Do you know how hard it was to explain to the kids why their grandma abandoned them? I didn't abandon anyone. I refused to be used. There's a difference." "This is ridiculous," James said. "You're our mother. You're supposed to be there for us." "I was your mother for my whole life. I raised you. I cared for you. I sacrificed everything for you. But you're not children anymore. You're adults with your own families. And I'm no longer obligated to solve all your problems." "Then what?" Sarah looked at me with shining eyes. "Are we not your family anymore? Do we not matter? You stopped treating me like family a long time ago. You turned me into a service, into something useful but not valuable. That's not true." "No?" I held her gaze. "When was my last birthday, Sarah?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "August 15th, almost 5 months ago. You didn't call, you didn't come. You didn't even send a message until 3 days later. And you, James, not even that." James looked away. "We've been busy." "You're always busy, except when you need me for something." "This is an exaggeration," Sarah said. "Yes, we've been busy, but we've always loved you. Love without actions is just noise. You loved me when it was convenient. You looked for me when you needed something. But when I needed something, when I was sick, when I was alone, you were never there." Sarah wiped away tears that were starting to fall. But this time, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. These were tears she needed to cry. "So what now?" James asked. "You're just cutting us out of your life?" "I'm not cutting you out. I'm setting boundaries. I'm no longer going to be available every time you need me. I'm no longer going to pay for things you should be paying for. I'm no longer going to watch your children every time you want to get away. I have my own life, and it's time for me to live it." "But you're the grandmother," Sarah insisted. "Yes, I'm the grandmother and I love my grandchildren. But loving them doesn't mean sacrificing my dignity. If you want me to be a part of your lives, it's going to be on my terms. With respect, with consideration, with reciprocity." "This is selfishness," James said. "Call it whatever you want. I call it self-love." There was a long silence. Sarah and James looked at each other, communicating in that silent language that only siblings share. Finally, Sarah spoke. "And what if we can't accept that? Then we have nothing more to talk about. The door is open when you're ready to see me as a person, not as a resource. But I'm not going to beg for your respect. Not anymore." Sarah turned around and started walking to the car. James stayed for a moment longer, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. There was something there. Maybe confusion. Maybe the first glimmer of understanding. "I never thought you'd do something like this," he finally said. "Me neither. But it turns out I have more strength than you both thought." He nodded slowly and followed his sister. I watched them get in the car and drive away. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel relief. I just felt calm. I closed the door. My legs were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally having said everything I needed to say. I weigh very satisfied of myself. If you like my story, subscribe to Granny Life Lessons.